So I'm a person with crazy hair, quite a good sense of humour, don't know much about politics, I'm ideal.
But is it true you don't even vote?
Yeah, no, I don't vote.
Well, how do you have any authority to talk about politics then?
Well, I don't get my authority from this pre-existing paradigm, which is quite narrow and only serves a few people. I look elsewhere for alternatives that might be of service to humanity. But here's the thing it shouldn't do. Shouldn't destroy the planet, shouldn't create massive economic disparity, shouldn't ignore the needs of the people. But it's not that I'm not voting out of apathy. I'm not voting out of absolute indifference and weariness and exhaustion from the lies, treachery, deceit of the political class that has been going on for generations now, and which has now reached fever pitch where we have a disenfranchised, disillusioned, despondent underclass that are not being represented by that political system. So voting for it is tacit complicity with that system, and that's not something I'm offering up. No, I'm saying I was part of a social and economic class that is underserved by the current political system, and drug addiction is one of the problems it creates when you have huge, underserved, impoverished populations. People get drug problems and also don't feel like they want to engage with the current political system because they see that it doesn't work for them. They see that it makes no difference. They see that they're not served.
Well,
I say that
it doesn't
the apathy,
work for them if they don't bother to vote.
Jeremy, my darling, I'm not saying that the apathy doesn't come from us, the people. The apathy comes from the politicians. They are apathetic to our needs. They're only interested in servicing the needs of corporations. And the genuine, legitimate problems of the people are not being addressed by our political class.
All of those things may be true.
They are true.
But you took... I wouldn't argue with you about many of them.
Well, how come I feel so cross with you? It can't just be because of that beard. It's gorgeous.
It's possibly because...
And if the Daily Mail don't want it, I do. I'm against them. Grow it longer. Tangle it into your armpit hair.
You are a very trivial man.
What do you think I am, trivial?
Yes.
A minute ago you were having a go at me because I want a revolution. Now I'm trivial. I'm bouncing about
I'm
all
not
over
having
the
a
place.
go at you because you want a revolution. Many people want a revolution, but I'm asking you what it would be like.
I think a socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, heavy taxation of corporations and massive responsibility for energy companies and any company that's exploiting the environment. I think they should be, I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. Okay. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word. I say profit is a filthy word because wherever there is profit, there is also deficit. And this system currently doesn't address these ideas. And so why would anyone vote for it? Jeremy, don't ask me to sit here in an interview with you in a bloody hotel room and devise a global utopian system. I'm merely pointing out that
You're calling for revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm calling for change. I'm calling for genuine alternatives.
But there are many people who would agree with you.
Good.
The current system is not engaging with all sorts of problems. Yes. And they feel apathetic. Really apathetic.
Yes.
But if they were to take you seriously and not to vote...
Yeah, they shouldn't vote. They should. That's one thing they should do. Don't bother voting now. Stop voting. Stop pretending. Wake up. Be in reality now. Time to be in reality now. Why vote? We know it's not going to make any difference. We know that already. So, like, you know, I have more impact at West Ham United, cheering them on, and they lost the City unnecessarily Saturday.
Okay, well, now you're being facetious.
Well, facetiousness has as much value as seriousness. I think you're making the mistake of mistaking seriousness.
You're not going to solve world problems by facetiousness.
We're not going to solve them with the current system. At least facetiousness is funny.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, Jeremy. So listen, so let's approach this optimistically. If we can engage that feeling, instead of some moment of lachrymose sentimentality trotted out on the TV for people to pore over emotional porn, if we can engage that feeling and change things, why wouldn't we? Why is that naive? Why is that not my right because I'm an actor? I mean, I've taken the right. I don't need the right from you. I don't need the right from anybody. I'm taking it. I'm saying there are people with alternative ideas that are far better qualified than I am, and far better qualified, more importantly, than the people that are currently doing that job.
Hi Russell, it's Stefan Molyneux from Freedomain Radio. I hope you're doing well. I watched your interview tonight with that pompous pubic hair faced British twerp, and I must say that was incandescent, that was magnificent, and I just wanted to applaud you for your passion, your commitment, and your justified mammalian homicidal outrage at the way in which the underclasses are treated in the current system. I share, for what it's worth, your massive hostility and skepticism towards voting. It really is like voting for the man who doesn't get the bullet in the firing squad. You're going to end up with no head anyway, and it is a ridiculous farce to participate in. The only thing that I would say, and this may seem odd to those who've watched the video, is that my brother you just didn't go quite far enough. I wanted to point that out because, yeah, the entire system is a massive n-dimensional Mobius strip clusterfrack of the poor, and particularly of the unborn through national debts. And it is a warmongering, hate-filled, deceptive, lying, manipulative, sociopathic system that we live in. But the temptation that I would invite you to look at is the temptation to believe that more power is going to solve the problem of great power. There is always this belief that if we just hit the gas a little more, that if we just take more power and give more power to control others into the hands of some angelic, godlike, unselfish, beautiful people, that we can make the world a paradise. But I think that history, facts, and experience will show, if you think about it in a particular way, that's just not true. What is true, for instance, is that America has spent $4 to $5 trillion over the past 5 years on the welfare state, and the poor are in a worse place. America has tried to get the poor into houses with a variety of beneficial schemes, which causes a massive housing crash. More power in the state won't work. More power to redistribute, more power to tax, more power to control, more power to fence in and box in all of the special interests that you see using the government to slowly club the poor into a proletariat bloody mass. More power will only attract more sociopaths. More power will only attract more evil. More taxation will only attract more exploiters. More control will only attract more controllers. The U.S. in the last 5 years has spent more money on the poor that probably existed for the first 10,000 years of human history, and the poor are worse off than they were before. Since the 1960s, your dream of tax the rich and control the corporations and give the money to the poor has been tried repeatedly, extravagantly, violently, viciously, bottomlessly. And it doesn't work. The nature of what you called for, the redistribution of income, which is a completely understandable impulse. This man, his plate is so full of food he can't possibly finish it for 5 generations. This man is rail thin and starving and eating a constant buffet of his own fingernails. The desire to take a little bit of food or money or power from this man's plate and give it to this man is almost overwhelming, and it is the greatest temptation and the greatest pit to fall into when you really want to change the world. The world does not suffer from a deficiency of power, my friend. The world does not suffer from a deficiency of income redistribution. In America, those who are on the receiving end of government handouts currently outnumber those who are paying taxes, including those who are government workers, who you could argue is kind of in both camps. This is not because there hasn't been enough money. It's not because there hasn't been enough power. The dream of ending poverty has been pursued over the past 40 or 50 years with more resources than those who started the war on poverty under LBJ could have possibly dreamed of. The amount of wealth that has run through the government with the attempt and goal of trying to save the poor is more wealth than has been dreamt of by anyone who has ever wanted to help the poor. And the poor are worse off after all of that. You're not quite far enough. I say this with all humility and with all respect. I mean, again, your passion and your eloquence and the fiery dedication of your drive for equality and egalitarianism, I find absolutely admirable. I actually had a full head of hair before watching the interview. But you're not going far enough. The problem, my friend, is the state. Whatever mechanism you want to put in place to do this redistribution, to achieve this change that you want, is going to be an agency of coercion. And it's going to have a monopoly on coercion. You want to increase taxes on the rich? Who's going to do that? The state. Who are the people most likely to inhabit the state? The rich. And the rich will use the state to enhance their own income, no matter what you ask the state to do. It is fallible, greedy, corruptible human beings who will inhabit whatever sort of power you draw to behead your enemies will be seized by those enemies and used against your friends. This is the nature of power. This is the nature of violence. Whatever you want to do in the world that involves force, and taxation is theft, whatever you want to do in the world that involves force will require you to grant a monopoly of violence to a minority of people. And that will always and forever lead to the same thing. They will not attempt to solve the problem of poverty. They will attempt to create a permanent dependent class, this permanent underclass that you spoke of so beautifully in the interview, is kept by the powers that be to justify the continued escalation of taxation and debt. A farmer who domesticates cattle keeps them domesticated. And if you set up a system wherein the power of the state relies upon the existence of the poor will be fenced in and controlled and kept as livestock to milk the tax cattle with, by pointing, oh, don't you care about the poor? Give me your goddamn money then. And anybody who questions that, well, you just don't care about the poor. The government does not care about the poor as anything other than hostages to shame and capture the guilt of the innocent and force them to hand over additional money, rights, and children to the government. The government is the most ancient of evils. It is the most predictable of evils, and it is the most central of evils. The control that money has, the control that government has of money is central to the very thing that you're talking about. It's called regulatory capture or tax capture. Whatever rules you want to put in place to control the rich will simply use to control everybody else. Governments listen to small, concentrated, powerful people a lot more than they do to diffuse poor people. Whatever you put in place, the end result will be concentrated, omnipotent evil at the center of society, and that's what you're facing. So you're going to be guest editing a political magazine. I think that's fantastic. I think that your immense language skills should be put to the good of society, if that's your intention and your goal. I think you certainly have, in my humble opinion, the capacity. But make sure you target the right thing. The right thing is a violation of peace, known as the initiation of the use of force. It occurs at every level in society. It occurred against you when you were a child, when you were abused. It occurred against you when you were a child and you were sexually molested, which is, I would argue, the real source of drug addiction, not mere poverty. Drugs is so often what we use to attempt to heal the open wound left by an evil that everyone refuses to see around us, and that has in fact penetrated us. But whenever you try to solve problems by giving more power to individuals to initiate the use of violence, you end up not with a sort of moonlight of evil, but with a laser of evil pointed at everyone's forehead. I think that's what you want to fight. Not the corporations. The corporations are the shadows cast by the evil of the state. They are creations of the state. And they're already taxed at fairly massive amounts anyway. You tax them more, all they'll do is further control the government and strangle the poor and the opportunities of the intelligent. So, thank you again for your passion, for your commitment. I absolutely applaud it for what that's worth. And come on my show. We'll chat. Operations@freedomainradio.com. Just came off Joe Rogan. Might as well chat with you. Thank you very much.
Profit is good because one of the reasons it's good is because, it makes, workers have to show up and actually do their jobs, because if they don't, somebody's profits will suffer. And so somebody has a vested interest in making sure that the people show up and do their jobs. But of course, a lot of people think about profit as some kind of evil thing, a bad thing. And I'm going to play this one clip from this Russell Brand interview. And if you didn't see it, you can go up on YouTube. It's about a 10-minute exchange. And, he is quite impressive, Russell Brand, when you listen to him talk. Now, I don't know, maybe he's rehearsed this so many times that it really just wasn't just free thinking on his part. But, the way he, the way he speaks, the vocabulary that he uses, he's a very articulate, eloquent guy. And he's got a great sense of humor. So, I think there's a lot to be said for Russell Brand. But it also shows how you can be really smart and be really dumb at the same time. I mean, you can say something really stupid in a very smart way, in a very, a very intellectual way. And in many cases, the Russell Brands of the world are a byproduct of the crony capitalism that we have, of, these countries where we pretend we're about free markets, but we're really about socialism and big government. And because we have so much socialism and big government, we have all these problems. But then people like Russell Brand think the problems is capitalism. They think that's why we have these problems, is because we have too much capitalism, not because we have too much government. If we really had free markets, then maybe we wouldn't have all these Russell Brands. But I'm going to go in and play. This is just one little bit where he actually gets into the concept of profit and how he sees profits. All right, it's cut number 1.
Ian, you talk vaguely about revolution. What is it?
I think a socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, heavy taxation of corporations, and massive responsibility for energy companies and any company that's exploiting the environment. I think they should be. I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word. I say profit is a filthy word, because wherever there is profit, there is also deficit. And this system currently doesn't address these ideas.
So profit is a filthy word. Profit needs to be dramatically reduced, according to Russell Brand. I mean, one of the first things I'd say to him is, well, what about the profits of the movie industry? Should those profits be dramatically reduced? I mean, this guy's a multimillionaire because of the profits in the movie industry. Even if he doesn't earn the profits, even if he's just a paid actor, where do you think the producers get the millions of dollars to pay Russell Brand? They get it because they get profits. If the producers didn't have the expectation of profits, they wouldn't make the movies. Why are they shooting movies? To make a profit. And because they want to make a profit, they got to hire Russell Brand. They also have to hire a lot of people who aren't paid millions of dollars. They got to hire the camera crew, the sound guys, all the guys that do all the post-production work and all the lighting and the editing. And there are all these jobs that are created. All these people get paychecks because the movie producers want to make a profit. That's the only reason that films are made. They're made because people want to make a profit. So if Russell Brand says profits are filthy, let's reduce profits, then he doesn't want as many movies to be made. He wants fewer movies to be made. I mean, what movies are made non-profit? Documentaries? You can't pay Russell Brand's salary off some kind of non-profit documentary. And even most documentaries are made for a profit. I mean, what will we have in the entertainment industry if there were no profits? So maybe Russell Brand thinks it's only bad if the oil companies make a profit. It's okay if the movie companies make a profit, but not the oil companies. But don't we need oil? I mean, doesn't he drive around in a car? Maybe he flies around in a private jet. Where's the energy coming from? If the oil companies couldn't make a profit, there'd be no energy. There'd be no fuel for that jet. There'd be no jet. If the jet companies couldn't make a profit, Russell Brand would be sitting in that studio naked. Now, maybe he'd like that. But, nobody would have any clothes if the guys that made the clothes couldn't make a profit. I mean, everything that we have that we didn't make ourselves, everything that we bought, we have because somebody made a profit selling it to us. If they couldn't make a profit, the products wouldn't be there. If you have a job, the only reason you have a job is because your employer is making a profit. Why does somebody hire somebody? To make a profit. They're not doing it for nothing. I mean, profit is not a dirty word. We need to glorify profit. Profit is the most important thing in the free market economy. We need profits. The more, the better. Profits mean you're doing something right. Profits mean you're satisfying the desires, the needs of your customers. Customers like Russell Brand and all of his fans. You can see the entire video. It's up on YouTube. It's got at least 5 million people who have seen it. One of the things that Russell Brand said that in many ways I agreed with is the concept of voting, because he mentioned that he had never voted in his life. And the interviewer was like, well, you want to change the world. How are you going to change the world if you're not even voting? And he pointed out how futile it is to vote, because it doesn't matter who he votes for, because nothing's really going to change based on the candidates that theoretically have a chance of winning. And of course, he's true. It's correct. I mean, even here in America, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you voted for Mitt Romney or you voted for Barack Obama, either Mitt Romney or Barack Obama was going to be president, which meant that nothing was going to change, that everything would keep getting worse, because while there was a difference between the two, it wasn't a substantial enough difference to have really altered the course that we're on. I mean, Mitt Romney was not going to dismantle government. No, he was going to grow government. He just might have grown it a little bit more slowly than Barack Obama. But a vote for Mitt Romney was a vote for more government. Didn't matter what he said. There was going to be more government. I mean, that's what you're going to get. You know, did it matter that George Bush was president for 8 years instead of Al Gore, or who else did he run against? I forget. But it probably wouldn't have mattered. I mean, you know, government would have kept growing. I mean, Bush didn't veto anything. He kept, signing off on all the new government spending. So just because he's not voting, doesn't mean that he can't try to make a difference through some other means, because he might recognize the futility of the voting. In fact, what he said is that he didn't want to legitimize the process by just lining up and voting. Because remember, that's what the Soviet Union, they had elections in the Soviet Union, and they used to brag that they had higher participation than we did. But, I mean, was it a real election when you had the choice between, Communist A and Communist B? I mean, what difference does it make which communist you voted for? You were getting a communist. But they still had elections. But, do you think the Russians, you think they were proud of their votes? Or do you think they, no. I think that, not voting would have been a way to protest the fact that, you're not going to participate in a charade and just, pretend that you've got a choice when you don't. But going back to what he is saying about profits, I mean, we need to dramatically reduce profits, heavy taxation and wealth redistribution. That's what he wants. Massive socialism. Now, he doesn't say I'm a socialist, I'm a Marxist. I mean, that's really what he is. But he's trying to rebrand it. No pun intended. He's trying to rebrand Marxism because it's the same philosophy, but he doesn't want to say, well, my solution is a communist revolution, a Marxist revolution. So he's describing exactly the theory behind the Marxist revolution. And when they had that Marxist revolution in Russia, they succeeded in doing exactly what Russell Brand wants to do. They eliminated profits altogether. You couldn't have a profit in the Soviet Union. So if you want to know what a world without profits would look like, think back to the old Soviet Union. That was a world without profits, and it was a disaster. You couldn't get anything. I mean, there was widespread poverty. Things were so bad in Russia that people wanted to leave, and they would get shot if they were caught trying to escape. So if you don't have profits, things are so bad for the average person that you need barbed wires and machine guns to keep them from leaving the country. I mean, imagine, again, if there's no profits, how does anything get done? I mean, think about if you have a job. Think about all your fellow employees. What would you all do if there was no boss? If there was no structure to the organization? If all the workers just had to randomly come together for a common purpose to get things done? How would that happen? You see, the only reason there's a business is because somebody wants to make a profit. But if it's illegal to make a profit, then you can't start a business, right? So, but how would anything get done? How would workers organize themselves for a common purpose if there wasn't somebody doing the organizing? If there wasn't somebody putting all the pieces together, figuring out who does what, with what equipment do I need, what kind of skills, signing the job, supervising. I mean, all this comes from the desire to earn a profit. Because remember, how does an entrepreneur, how does a businessman get paid? Because he doesn't get a salary, because there's no one to pay him a salary. If you're the owner of the business, you don't get a paycheck, right? You sign everybody else's paychecks, but there's none for you, right? You've also got to pay your rent. You got to pay all your other bills for your operating expenses, your overhead. How do you make money as the business owner, as the entrepreneur? How do you make money if you're a shareholder in a corporation? You don't get a salary as being a shareholder. You get the profits. And the profits are what's left over after everybody else gets paid. And after all the workers get paid, all the stakeholders, the landlords, right, you pay all the taxes, you pay all the interest on any money you borrowed. After everybody gets paid and everybody has got all their money, if there's anything left over, that's the profit. That's what you get to keep. If there's nothing left over, you get nothing. If after you pay all your bills, you're negative, if you lose money as a business, where does that money come from? The business owner has to reach into his pocket and write a check from his personal finances, right? When you have all these people saying, we want to share in the profits. Okay, you want to share in the losses? What about all these union contracts where profit sharing? How come they don't have loss sharing? See, I would tell my workers, if there was a unionized workforce, you want to share the profits? Fine. How about loss sharing? How about if I have a loss, you kick back part of your salary to cover the loss? See, they never want to do that. Why do we need a profit? Profit compensates the entrepreneur for taking risk. If there's no profit, no one's going to take a risk. Why? You got no upside. Profit is the salary of the businessman, of the entrepreneur. Does Russell Brand want the entrepreneur to work for free? He wants them to do all that work for nothing? Obviously. But these are these buzzwords. Profit. Profit is bad. He said, I don't even understand what he means there. He says, wherever there is profit, there is deficit. What does he mean by that? I mean, is he trying to refer to Karl Marx's surplus value of labor, where Karl Marx said that the profit that the businessman makes comes at the expense of workers, that it's simply higher wages that all the workers could have earned, but that's being stolen, that's the deficit maybe he's talking about, that surplus value. But of course, what Karl Marx didn't understand, and neither does Russell Brand, is that if there's no profits, there's no jobs at all. There would be no jobs without profits. Who is going to hire somebody if they can't profit from it? There has to be a profit. And of course, if individuals could make more money working for themselves than accepting a job, they would do it. The fact that somebody isn't self-employed, the fact that somebody chooses to work for somebody else rather than work for themselves, which is always an option. Everybody has that option. Everybody can go start a business and work for themselves. Nobody forces anybody to accept a job from somebody else. But the fact that most people choose to work for somebody else instead of work for themselves, it's because they realize they can make more money working for somebody else than they could working for themselves. Well, if you're making more money working for a boss than yourself, how is he exploiting you? Even if he makes a profit, if he's still paying you more than you would have been able to earn on your own, there's no exploitation. There's no deficit. The worker benefits from his employer's profit, because without his employer's profit, he wouldn't have a job in the first place. But again, Russell Brand doesn't know this. He's a smart guy, but he hasn't thought it through. He hasn't been able to connect the dots. And I think the problem is that he can't see through the smokescreen. He can't see through all the government lies. Yes, he's upset about the big profits maybe that the banks are earning based on government bailouts and government stimulus. But he doesn't understand that it's the government that is screwing things up. It's not the free enterprise system that's wrong. It's not profits that are bad, but it's government. It's government manipulation. It's profits that are derived from special interests, from special treatment, from special tax breaks or special subsidies or cheap money. Those type of profits that are not earned in a free market, but in a command economy by government. That's what the enemy is. That's what's undermined the economy, not real free market capitalism.
Hey, Larken Rose here, and a bunch of people have been mentioning to me the interview that Russell Brand did on some BBC show, and I finally got to watch it, and it's just kind of depressing and frustrating. Okay, Russell recognizes that there's something horribly wrong in the world, like whoopee-doo. Okay, that doesn't take a huge amount of brilliance, and he cares about it, which is nice. But again, whoopee-doo. Lots of people see that something's wrong and wish it wasn't. And his solution, well, first of all, is pretty darn vague, which he admits. He doesn't really have much of a plan, but when, pressed on it, he basically said, well, socialist egalitarianism and a revolution and mass wealth redistribution and robbery, because that just led to a wonderful utopia in Red China and Soviet Russia and Cuba and the rest of them, didn't it? Yeehaw. So it's frustrating for the billionth time to hear somebody recognize something is horribly wrong and then to advocate something just as bad or worse because they don't really recognize the problem. And I started to write a thing in response to that. And after about 2 sentences, I said, wait, I've totally already written this before. So I'm going to read it. This is from my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, which already addresses it. It was also funny to watch the interviewer just harping on democracy. You don't vote, because Russell said, I don't vote, because he sees it's sort of a ridiculous game. And, kudos for that. Way to go. But the interviewer, you don't vote. How can you complain? You don't even vote. Oh my gosh, you don't even engage in the statist ritual of going into a booth and pressing a button. So this, what I'm about to read actually addresses both the democracy-worshipping bonehead statist interviewer and Russell Brand sort of being a doofus with his really bad idea for a solution to a problem, which at least he sees there's a problem, and then he condones an even bigger problem. So, yeah, instead of writing it all over again, I already wrote it once, so this is from The Most Dangerous Superstition. If you care, it's from page 151. Nearly everyone can see at least some problems with the government he lives under, whether it be corruption, warmongering, socialist redistribution, police state intrusions, or other oppressions. And many are desperate to find a solution to such problems. So they vote for this or that candidate, support this or that political movement or party, lobby for or against this or that legislation, and almost always end up disappointed with the results. They can easily identify and complain about various problems, but an actual solution always eludes them. The reason they are always disappointed is because the problem does not reside in the people called government. It resides in the minds of their victims. Tinkering with government cannot fix a problem that does not come from government. The dissatisfied voter fails to realize that it is his own view of reality, his own belief in authority, that is the root cause of most of society's problems. He believes that a ruling class is a natural, necessary, beneficial part of human society, and so all of his efforts focus on bickering over who should be in charge and on what the power of government should be used for. And you could totally see that in Russell's mentality. When he thinks of solutions, he thinks inside the box of statism. As a result, he is powerless from the beginning. Begging masters to be nice or asking for a new master never leads to freedom. Instead, such behaviors are clear indications that the person is not even free inside his own mind. And a man whose mind is not free will never be free in body. People are so accustomed to engaging in the cult rituals collectively referred to as politics, voting, lobbying, petitioning, campaigning, etc., that any suggestion that they not bother participating in such pointless and impotent endeavors amounts, in their eyes, to suggesting that they do nothing. Yeah, that's for you, bonehead interviewer, who's shocked and offended that Russell wouldn't vote. Because they view voting, whining, and begging as the entire spectrum of possibilities open to them when it comes to government, they are unable to even comprehend anything that might actually accomplish freedom. So when a voluntarist or anarchist explains both the problem and the way out of it, but without presenting a new candidate to vote for, a new political party to support, or some new movement or campaign to get behind, in other words, without proposing anything that coincides with the superstition of government and authority, the average statist will complain that no solutions were offered. From their perspective, anyone who does not play the game of politics within the rules set down by the ruling class is, quote, doing nothing. Hear that, interviewer guy? They enthusiastically declare, you have to participate. They fail to realize that participating in the game created and controlled by tyrants is doing nothing. Nothing useful, at least. In truth, rather than some event needing to occur or some particular thing needing to be done, the real solution, the only solution to the problems involving government, comes from not doing certain things, and from certain things not happening. In one sense, there is no positive, active solution to government. The ultimate solution is negative and passive. Stop advocating aggression against your neighbors. Stop engaging in rituals that condone the initiation of violence and reinforce the notion that some people have the right to rule. Stop thinking and speaking and acting in ways that reinforce the myth that normal people should be and must be beholden to some master, and should obey such a master rather than follow their own consciences. When people stop bowing at the altar of government, stop playing the game of tyrants, stop respecting arbitrary rules written by megalomaniacs, the problem will go away on its own. Being a mythical entity, authority does not need to be overthrown or voted out or reformed. The people need only stop imagining something that is not there and never was. If the people stopped allowing an irrational superstition to warp their perceptions, their actions would immediately and dramatically improve. Most aggression, which is now done in the name of authority, would cease. No one would issue commands, enforce commands, or feel an obligation to obey commands unless the commands themselves were seen as inherently justified based upon the situation, not based upon the one giving the command or his supposed authority. That alone would eliminate the vast majority of theft, extortion, intimidation, harassment, coercion, terrorism, assault, and murder which human beings now perpetrate against one another. When the people recognize and accept no master, they will have no master. Ultimately, their bondage and the means to escape it exists entirely inside their own minds. Human society does not need anything added to it to fix most of its problems, nor does it need the institution of some new system or the implementation of some new master plan. Russell Brand. Instead, it needs to have one thing, one all-pervasive, extremely destructive thing removed from society: the belief in authority and government. What will make things work is not any centralized plan, not any authoritarian agenda, but the mutually voluntary interaction of many individuals, each serving his own values and following his own conscience. Of course, this does not fit at all with the way almost everyone was trained to think, that society needs a master plan with leaders who will make it happen. In truth, what society needs most is the complete lack of a master plan and the complete absence of authoritarian leaders to whom the people must surrender their free will and judgment. The solution is not to add some new thing to society, but simply to understand and dispel the most dangerous superstition. So, that about covers it. And, Russell Brand, I'm glad you care. I'm glad you see there's a problem. But you really need to rethink what's inside your own head, because all you're doing is condoning a new, massive, authoritarian plan of initiating violence. And that's what wealth redistribution is. And whenever it's so tempting when people believe in authority to see a problem and say, I know better, my ideas should be forced on everybody else. And that's exactly what Russell Brand is doing. I know how things should be, and there should be a big monstrous authority forcing the world to be the way I think it should be. That doesn't ever work. It's not ever moral. It never leads to peace. It never leads to freedom. It never leads to justice. It leads to bloodshed and mayhem and death and destruction. The only thing that will lead to peace and justice is when people say, I see a problem, and the problem is people imagining that their ideas should be forced on others. You do away with that, and the problem is gone. And that's completely a matter of people fixing the superstitions and assumptions and paradigms inside their own heads. And so far, Russell Brand is doing nothing to make that happen. He's just trying to recycle an old authoritarian, hugely destructive, bogus idea for a new master plan, because he doesn't at all see the actual problem. He sees symptoms of a problem. He realizes something's wrong. Good for you. Russell Brand, the problem is still firmly lodged inside your freaking head. Fix that, and then you might have some prayer of influencing society for the better.